Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we are coming to you from Amsterdam. We are at the DevCon conference here in the Netherlands. We are going to be digging into what is the NL5, which is a collaboration group made up of the 5 largest construction companies in the Netherlands who collaborate on very large shared industry-wide challenges. We're going to get into what that actually means and a whole lot more. So to help tell that story today, I'm joined by Arnoud van der Heijden, the project manager digital at BIM Netherlands, and Jelle Schweigmann, a BIM manager at Royal Heijmans. Gentlemen, how are you both feeling today?
I'm pretty good. I think I'm excited for DevCon for the next 2 days.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting conference. We're super happy to be here, and I appreciate you both joining me. Jelle, how are you doing today?
Great as well. Got the kind of a trip here, so that all went fine. So I'm really excited to see what's happening today.
Yeah, I feel you there. I've been awake since about 2:30 in the morning. So we've had quite a trip this far. Yeah. The joys of jet lag and everything else. But before we go deeper into the NL5 today, I was hoping I could hear a little bit about your role in the work that you do and some of the big digital problems that each of you solve. Arnold, I'd love it if you could go first today.
Sure. Well, I'm project manager digital for BIM Netherlands. I'm responsible for the digital construction domain in the Netherlands. And I think my biggest challenge this year is to get more grip on everything that's going on around technology, around applications, and of course AI. There's so much going on. There's just so much coming to our people. And we have to make good and efficient use of it.
Yeah. The pace of change in the construction industry is just this exponential curve upwards. So
extremely.
I have a tremendous empathy as you're trying to get your head around what's happening and how it impacts your team. Jelle, how about yourself?
Well, I'm a BIM manager of Heijmans non-residential, responsible for operational and strategic BIM implementation. And what Arnoud was already saying, so many things are changing at the same time. So you really have to choose. I think it's like, what do we do today? What do we do tomorrow? What will bring it? And how are we going to keep our people up with the new pace? Because they have to go along. That will be the biggest problem we face, to get them really, going where the world is going.
Companies right now who aren't thinking about these challenges the way both of you have just shared are quickly going to get left behind. Like there's a real important competitive angle to staying ahead of the technology in the way we upskill our teams and everything that comes with that. So there's a lot of big problems to solve, to say the least, within the construction industry. And so I'd love it if we could kind of go back to the beginning and uncover what actually brought the NL5 to life and caused the 5 largest contractors in the Netherlands to come together in this way. Jelle, could you kind of kick this off for us?
So the group started like a few years ago at Autodesk University, where people from the different companies talked to each other and kind of saw that they were facing the same problems. And this kind of regarding to Autodesk, obstacles in the way they want to work and what could be done. They said, well, we're here all, so we can talk as a group with Autodesk. And they immediately saw that they got more attention, because it was interesting for Autodesk. And that's where it was born. Well, I don't know what the problems were back then. I think we solved them already because we are, in a different water right now. We saw that we got more attention, that we saw more what Autodesk was doing, spoke to more people at once, because it's more efficient, of course. So, that helped.
Yeah, no, it makes sense as you combine forces and really kind of share the same story and messaging and, gather more attention from the folks that you're, trying to bring change to and broaden the conversation. Arnold, I'd be curious if anything on your end to add to that.
I think what Jelle is saying, and together we have a bigger voice. And we think in the Netherlands we are pretty big as a company, but when you zoom in, you're just on one company in one country in one Europe. It's really small. So I think it's a big advantage to collaborate. In the Netherlands, we have a saying, I will do it in English for you, otherwise it will be really hard. Alone you're faster, but together you come further.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what we're doing here, because when we collaborate, we can make bigger steps.
I've heard the variations of that saying before, and I think it really resonates, especially in an industry like the construction industry. we can't solve these problems by ourselves. We really do need to come together and have really impactful conversations about where we're headed. And so could you share a little bit about the makeup of the NL5 specifically, and which companies are participants?
From the Netherlands, we have the 5 biggest integrated construction companies. So that's, of course, BAM and Heijmans. We have Dura Vermeer, Volker Wessels, and TBI. With those 5, we work together. And what we currently do is mostly share knowledge, but also speak about common pains and see how we can work together regarding collaboration, but also with conversations with our vendors. So not only Autodesk, but also other vendors, or really specific subjects that more are industry-based and instead of company-based.
I love it. And Jelle, I'd love if you could share a bit more about this operating model. Like, how do you guys work together and come together? Can you tell me more about that?
We come together once in 2 months. We've got a core group. That's the group that makes the decisions what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
Then there's a bigger group who comes once every 2 months also together to see the progress on the topics that we all have. And that's more people are there to, well, get the opinion of more of the NL5. And what's really interesting is that we've got, on each topic, we've got 5 people from from every company to really go in a deep dive for the topic we want to address to Autodesk or whatever. Lots of people are in more of those groups, and that doesn't really matter, but it's really that you need some kind of deep dive to really get things going. Because if you're just talking, it will be a talk group, and you don't want it to be a talk group. You want to have results and be real specific. And that's also an interesting thing about the NL5. Collaborating makes us choose the best priority topics. Because if you're in a company, from lots of ways, there are a lot of topics that they want to change. But if you talk with 5 contractors together, then you can do them all. So you focus on the part that is really interesting. And that helps Autodesk or other vendors as well.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, also the challenge from ourselves, because we're all big companies ourselves. So for the Netherlands, our company has more than 7,000 people. So we also need to get all the questions and all the priorities up to one point, and then we need to prioritize with other companies. So it's like a triangle. So it also helps us focus indeed also from what's really important. And then we can see and focus on the similarities between all the companies and see how we can proceed.
It does make a bunch of sense, because you have to be very specific. You can't entertain the perspectives of thousands of people for every one of these conversations. There's a privilege in being able to sit together and compare notes between the different companies to say, okay, this is where we're struggling and why. Are you experiencing the same issue? And if the answer is no, you have an opportunity to go, well, tell me more about how you solved that problem. And if the answer is yes, then you continue to elevate it and try to figure out how you can bring change to either the industry or the way you guys work. But I think it just says a lot about the intention behind the group, in that you're trying to make sure you don't just have a talk organization where you stay high level, because the action that follows is what really ends up becoming really important. Arnoud, I'd love it if you could share a story or an example where the NL5 alignment really led to a better outcome than you could have achieved as one company. It's like, what was the problem? What did you guys end up doing? And, what was the result from there?
Yeah, I think we got 2 really specific subjects. So one is that we're still working on is regarding sustainability. Of course, a bigger problem in the whole world, and not only Netherlands. What we see that we still need to provide a lot of calculations to the government and also to other clients. And most of the products that we currently use are focused on American databases or other databases. And in the Netherlands, we have, of course, also our specific Dutch databases.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that we all face, not only BAM, but also other companies, not only NL5, but the whole industry in the Netherlands. So that we're working on now with Autodesk to see if we can create APIs to connect to our Dutch databases. So that's something that we can leverage, but still we're working on. And one of the other topics that we did a couple of years ago was when we transitioned from BIM 360 to ACC, when it still was ACC. There were some gaps that we all saw. And there were some really specific gaps that we all have really big issues with. Is that big influence on our processes. So when we collaborate, we share knowledge with each other, see where are the common pains prioritized, and give feedback to Autodesk as an industry on what to focus on, what to develop next. And that I think there were like 4 or 5 subjects that were developed in the next 2 or 3 months that we can really push instead of waiting for a year. And now we had it in a couple months. And I think that's the biggest plus that we had in this collaboration.
It's always encouraging to hear that. And I think with any vendor you work with, picking one that is willing to entertain that conversation as well and make changes and iterate on what we've done and identify where we can do better as an organization as well. I'm really encouraged to hear that. And I appreciate the examples that you've shared here so far. Jelle, do you have any other examples that come to mind?
No, but I think the sustainability thing was really interesting because the standards in the Netherlands, we didn't have all the databases ready yet. So as a kind of a spin-off, or it muted somewhere, that those databases were made with the same people who are with the NL5 to see how we connected them to Autodesk. So you see that some other initiatives come together in this kind of things. So it does more and it connects more than just a sustainability tool. So that's really interesting to see that happen.
It makes sense. I mean, you get to really build on the success and share that knowledge with other organizations as well. It's a pretty cool way for you guys to come together. I'd also be curious to understand more about how your teams balance and navigate the trust necessary to collaborate as closely as you do, while knowing that you'll often be bidding against each other on future projects. Like there's an interesting dynamic there, and I'd love to hear a bit more about it.
Yeah, I think there are a few things that are really important. First thing is that take mutual problems. Don't talk about projects or whatever. That's not interesting. We're not going to change anything about that. We don't even talk about it. We don't even are interested in that, for example. But it's really facing the problems we all face and focus on that. And if not everyone is behind it, then just don't do it. So that's one of the things that's really important, I think. You also need to have people who want to collaborate. And I think we've got an interesting group doing a lot of things in platforms which deal with standardization in the Netherlands or even abroad. So they want to cooperate. I think that's really important. It's also really important to have a good mix about kind of managers and people who really are working in the field. So you get the right topics in hand, and then you're going to get good results if you have that.
And I think just there's a lot of trust that's built in as far as just being able to comfortably share the challenges that you're having and understand that there's good intentions as your teams come together to work together. I'm routinely encouraged by the construction industry and the broader AECO industry in particular, because folks just seem very interested in coming together and sharing knowledge. And I think this is going to continue to become even more important as technology continues to accelerate in its adoption across the industries, and just the way that we work together continues to evolve. So your partnership, from what you've shared so far, is pretty exciting, and I think also fairly unique in some ways. What problems out there are too big for one contractor to solve, in your opinion, right now? And why does a coalition like the NL5 change the direction of what's possible?
I think sustainability, of course, is a problem that we're facing, that we just discussed. We also have now sector standards coming in from the Netherlands, from the government, regarding information that you need to attach to your model, for example. And I think a problem that we're going to face in the next coming years is robotics. We're already working on several companies with several robotics to see how we can use robotics on our construction sites. Big labor problems, of course, coming. And we see now they're not autonomous yet. The technology is there, so we can do the robotics autonomous on our construction sites. But the problem now is the regulations. It's not allowed by our government to use autonomous robots. And it's not a problem that we as BIM are going to solve with our Dutch government. So we need to collaborate with all the other builders to see how we can convince and persuade and see how we can work with robotics autonomously on our construction site in the next coming years. Because that's going to be, I think, the next big change after AI.
Yeah, I think that's definitely coming, and I'm hearing more and more about robotics. It's an interesting technology to apply as well. I've heard from other folks that robotics specifically changes kind of the dynamic of what you can do on a construction project, because you're no longer constrained to what a person can carry or move as far as like what a piece of sheetrock or drywall is shaped like changes.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that you guys can kind of crack that problem as well, because
It's a big
it
problem.
has a big implication for the way you actually get out and do work on site.
Yeah, and it has so much influence on the process before the construction site. So on the engineering process, it's so big influence on how you want to communicate with your robot and to see how does he know that he need to put a wall or a brick or something else at that point. He needs to give the information at a good way to the robotic. And I think that's also I think a problem for the next few years to crack, to see how do we need to communicate with the robots and what can he actually do.
Jelle, anything to add to that as far as the bigger problems you're solving?
There's another thing, I guess, and that's maybe a bit, well, again, on the sustainability. In Europe, you've got European law, you've got Dutch law, and they're not the same. They're based on the European law, but they're not the same. And that's not really a problem, that every country in Europe has some other regulations, if the method we use to make those calculations or whatever is the same. And what we see is that big vendors can't make for every little country some different way of working.
Yeah.
So we have to have the same methods as European law. That's also something we're not gonna do on our own as a company on our own. So we need a bigger team to do so. So also that's one of the things I think that's really important.
It's definitely a challenge, especially if the regulations between the country and the EU more broadly are potentially at odds with each other as far as the expectations and requirements. And it's hard to adapt and evolve to make sure you fit every single niche. But I know we've mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this more broadly. When you do show up as, 5 separate customers versus the NL5, when you're speaking with the vendors to try to solve some of these problems as far as the technology fitting into all of these use cases, can you tell me a bit more about how that really shows up in the change that you've been able to enact in those conversations?
Yeah, well, I think I also mentioned it the first Autist University, that the first NL5 getting more attention. We also mentioned that we were more focusing on typical issues. Mm-hmm. So you got more focus. And I think the last AU was a good example. We had an LF5 meeting about Autist Construction Cloud. We had a lot of tip topics that we wanted to address there. And we did. But we also saw how Autodesk was organized. Because usually you talk to one or other, you don't know what's the bigger picture. And we saw now that for Autodesk Construction Cloud, now Forma, there were lots of teams on different places in the world. They were all together there for us to walk through docs and build and all the other model coordination and all the features that was going on. And we had more understanding about what's happening in Autodesk. Because when we saw all those teams, we said, okay, change one thing in one thing is easy, but to get them all aligned, that's a different picture. So you talk to the people who are really working on that. That wouldn't be possible if we did it alone. We got a bigger picture about what's happening at Autodesk. So that helps mutual ways.
I definitely understand that. I mean, Autodesk is a very large company, and I've got teammates all around the world, and so I'm glad to hear that the event allowed you to bring more of those folks together and kind of have a shared vision. I think you had, the group together with the NL5 on one side and just more of the Autodesk team together to have that bigger picture conversation, which is pretty exciting. Is there anything specific about the Netherlands as well? I'd love your thoughts on why the NL5 works in the relationship that your teams have, because I think it's a pretty special organization or relationship you've built. Yep. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Of course, culture. We're really friendly people. That also helps always. And it's also kind of practical, I think, because it's a small country. So it's really dense. So if we meet in the middle of the Netherlands, for the people who live, I think, in the north or in the south, it's 2 hours drive, and that's the max. For most people, it's like a 1 hour drive. So that makes it easier so that we work together. If we live close by. We also have projects that we work together on, like joint ventures. Mm-hmm. That also really helps because we have mutual problems on the same projects. So that will, when one company benefits, the other one also benefits, of course.
We're doing lots of projects together also because it's a small country. Really big, risky projects we join. And that means that we're, we know how the other companies are working and we know where problems are. So I think that's another thing that's really common for the Netherlands, I guess.
We're a small country, but it's always, we call it a small world regarding BIM and digital, because it also happens that one colleague from one NL5 company leaves the company and goes to another NL5 company. But we all know each other for the last 10, 15 years. So it's also a small world and we have the common problems.
Yeah, we had a laugh a few years ago when we were all from Utrecht University in the same plane home. We said if this one really goes down, then digitalization in the Netherlands, bye.
Yeah.
So
able to wave at each other. The flight attendants are all looking around like, what is this group of people? But I think your points about the uniqueness of the environment really do resonate for me. I mean, like there are a lot of people in the Netherlands. It's a very dense country in a lot of senses, but the geographical size, to your point, I think plays a positive factor in the relationship here. I mean, I think about this in contrast to like the state that I live in the United States, which is likely much larger than the Netherlands itself is. I mean, for me to drive from one side to the other, east to west in Oregon is like 10 or 12 hours of just driving in a straight line forever. And the geographic difference makes it much more complex for people to collaborate in the way that you guys do. Do you think it would work in other regions with all of those unique characteristics in mind in someplace else?
Yeah, I think in not the biggest countries, but I think smaller companies like Germany or Belgium or Denmark, maybe UK and I. But it also depends on, I think, also culture.
Yeah.
And I think we all face the same problems. And that's the industry that we're in the digital construction industry, is that most of our software and applications that we use on site is all SaaS solutions. So it's everything that we buy. And if one company buys it, another one can also buy it. So we have common interest if make the product the best. We're not going to, that won't be different on a project if we use this product or that product.
Yeah, there's a consistency in that conversation, to say the least. But I do appreciate just the thought behind it. And I think culture is really kind of the connecting thread here that brings your organizations together, even outside of the shared problems. Just the openness and friendliness. And I can attest to this just spending a little bit of time in the Netherlands so far. Is just everybody is very friendly, very interested in helping. And I think it really has a positive impact on the work that you're doing. Jelle, I'd like to look ahead a little bit. If we're having this conversation in 5 years, and I hope we get to, what would you point to as proof that the NL5 has worked, and what would you hope has changed because of the collaboration?
Every step on the way to more standardization in the Netherlands will be an example of that it works. And it doesn't really matter where we do that. If it's on robotics or it's on what we do with Autodesk or sustainability or whatever, every step is one. I don't have really goals because I don't know where we will be heading in 5 years, to be honest. It's really turbulent. So
no, the change is so fast. It's hard to predict.
In the Netherlands, it's really digitalized. The country is really digitalized. So everyone who wants to go. And I think there's a real broad opinion that we have to standardize. So it has to be standard, one way. If we don't do that, we're going to be all over the place and it won't work. That's a good basic thing to do things. And if we keep on building that, and L5 is a great place to do so, then, everything can happen. So it's really important.
If a big group of other major contractors in another country want to create their own version of the NL5, I'd be interested in any advice each of you would offer to help them get started, and also alternatively, if there's anything specific that you think they should avoid as they're trying to bring the organizations together in this way.
Yeah, I think what Jelle also mentioned is that focus on similarities, on the mutuals, and see where we have common interest, and avoid all the contracts and commercials. There's two different worlds. Focus on the technique and not on the commercials.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and a good group of people who want to collaborate. I already mentioned that. It's really important that you have the right people who are open for discussions and open for new ways of working. So you really need that. And get some people there who are always already working with well, we've got platforms like Digigo, which is a Dutch platform for digitalization. People who work there or are participating in projects there get them also in an NL5 to get the standards going, to have the knowledge to where to find it and how to use it. And that's really important.
Yeah, and I think also what's important there, we underestimate the power of our vendors. Even yesterday, I had a conversation with one of our other vendors, a software vendor, and we're discussing our roadmaps and the problems that we're facing and the feature requests that we have. And he told me, well, this morning I was at Duurafmeer and he had the same problem. And I also heard this problem from TBI. So our vendors have sometimes even more a broader perspective on what's actually needed. So we don't focus. I think you also speak to your vendors and see where they find similarities also between the other companies, and see if we can collaborate on that also.
I like that point too, where they have the opportunity to talk about these problems in a very different way with each of these organizations. And I think there's some learnings that the vendors can bring back to the conversation too, where they go, we hear this over and over again. We're here to help fix it, which is encouraging to hear. So I think you've both done a really great job of showcasing just the value that the NL5 brings to your country and each of the companies that are working here. And I think also to the different vendors that you work with as well, that shared voice and shared vision has a big impact on the way you get your work done. And I think there's a lot to be excited about. So even just thinking about my 5 years from now question, I look forward to the next time we get to cross paths and see what's evolved. But I've got one more final question for both of you, and it's one I ask everybody, so I'm excited to hear your answers. Jelle, you want to go first. What is one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
We always work with Forma, for example. We work on every project with that. So
nice. Well, I appreciate the answer just since I do hail from Autodesk. But a great tool. I did not ask him to say that for anybody who might be out there wondering that as well. Anything on your end? What's one tool that you use in every project?
Well, I don't do projects myself anymore, so I'm more focused on strategy. So I came from the Autodesk side. I'm a little bit ashamed of it, but my tool that I use every day is PowerPoint. I use it every day for communicating with my colleagues and other vendors, and it's so much easy. So it's not an Autodesk product, but PowerPoint is my main tool.
Well, I appreciate that as well. I feel sad inside sometimes when I have to spend too much time in PowerPoint. I'm admittedly not very good at using it, and so it's a lot more brute force to try to get what I need into that document. But it does definitely come together. But gentlemen, I appreciate both of you so much for sharing your perspective here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for everybody out there listening, of course, you've likely figured out I'm your host, Eric Thomas. We are in an absolutely lovely space in Amsterdam. So if you are listening on the audio version, you should absolutely head over to YouTube and take a peek at what we're up to. Of course, you can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast player out there. If you have any questions for me, hit me up on LinkedIn. I am the only Eric Thomas that works at Autodesk. Till the next time, goodbye.